absolutely delighted to have you here. Go Frogs, as we say. Let's dive into today's topic, focused leadership to deliver on commitments. As I noted in the introduction, you really have a fascinating background. It's a really interesting one, the combination of mechanical engineering, of English, and then business. I think that's intriguing. We wouldn't see that very often. How has this diverse background helped you navigate the complexities of running a major airline like American, which involves the necessity for operational expertise, effective communication, financial management, strategic decision making?
Well, thanks, Dean, and good morning, everybody. It's a pleasure and honor to be with all of you. TCU campus is fabulous. It looks just wonderful, and I feel like Fort Worth, at least for me, is coming home every time I come back across town. But anyway, I feel like sitting down and talking about backgrounds is always hard.
Yeah.
You know, because when you said, chief recruitment officer I take that very seriously, and my big jobs today are making sure I'm selling Fort Worth and selling Dallas and recruiting people to American Airlines. So we have plenty of people over here that are taking resumes. Okay, I just want to start with that. But in terms of background or education, I tried to I pursued I thought I liked math and science and engineering. And so I pursued that. I found out I wasn't particularly good at it. But at least at Notre Dame at the time, they offered a program which you could, over 5 years, you could get a bachelor's in a liberal arts program, and then also a science degree. And so I pursued that. And it was incredibly helpful because while I might not have been that talented of an engineer, right, I was an engineer that could write. And so communication, as you'll find, is the key behind everything, right? We had an offsite yesterday of my senior leadership team, and of a company where you have operations and you're flying to Brisbane and you're helping develop the next generation of aircraft, and you're marketing things on the app and all those kind of things. The vast majority of time that we spent, it was all talking about collaboration and communication. And so I feel like that is just a cornerstone, and it's something that has served me very, very well. Yeah. And it's just been a way to get a foot in the door. For business school, I went back to, I grew up outside of Detroit, and I went back to, and I know that we have some Midwesterners here too, right? I know that I have a neighbor of mine from Minnesota. And I don't know if Greta Hall is here, but if she is, raise your hand. There you are. Your dad sent me a note last night and said you'd be here. But I went back to school in Michigan, and one of the things I was able to do even there in getting a business, in getting an MBA, was I taught as a TA, writing for engineers, and that paid for my business school. Very nice. So again, I tell you that. A broad background, one that specializes in communication, incredibly helpful.
Yes. So this leads into your leadership style. This is something we care about a lot here. We care about it at institutions of higher education. We certainly care about it at business schools. We teach leadership. We try to understand leadership. It's a difficult construct to understand, but when we have truly successful August senior leaders here, it would be remiss of us to not ask them how they think about their own leadership style. So how do you describe your own style, and how has this evolved over time?
Well, I think it starts with a work ethic. Half of life is just showing up, and it's just really true today. If you want to really do well in something, you put time into it. And as well, I think it's you take a look at the world today and the kind of things that you can pursue with an education, either at the undergrad level or the graduate level, and you have so many people that are saying, hey, well, I just want to make it to get out and make some money. I tell you, there's a lot of hard work to be done in the world. Yeah. And the thing that I believe that people value more than anything else is people that are going to be dependable, that are going to show up. And again, you don't have to be, the highest, GPA student. You don't have to be the most decorated in terms of degrees. But the thing that people really value is, are you going to be there with them when you need them?
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to do the hard jobs, the things that nobody else wants to do?
Yeah.
And so I think that's probably where I started my career. I worked at Procter & Gamble, but I started off in a pretty unglamorous part of Procter & Gamble, and that was in supply chain. And first job out of undergrad was sitting down with a group of customer service reps. None of them had higher education, but they were all really dedicated to the company. And at 22 years old or 23 years old, you're sitting with people that are grizzled veterans and really know their stuff pretty well, and they're looking to see whether or not you can relate. So I think that, at least for me, a hallmark has been wanting to get in and take the hard work, the stuff that nobody else really wants to do, and see if you can excel at it. You build a reputation. People want to be around you. Networking is so important that way. But at the end of the day, I view it no more different than relationships that you would have in a family or with friends. Are you going to be there when they need you?
This focus on hard work and conscientiousness, is that something that just came naturally to you? You figured this out straight away, or did that take a little while through your career to learn?
No, a lot of people grow up in different ways, but one of the things I benefited from, my grandfather was basically a gardener or a truck farmer in Kansas. And so, we would plant, tomato plants every year and, sell them and whatnot. And you find out that there's a lot of fun in being able to, be part of something that has a season to it and, real accomplishment at the end of it. But no, I would say that that's something that was ingrained, pretty early on. That there's a love of work and a view of work as being something that is, it's pleasurable.
Right.
Today, if you ask me where would I rather be, would you rather be out skiing or going to a fancy restaurant or whatever else? I'd start with I'd probably want to go and see what's going on at work. It probably sounds kind of nuts.
A little intimidating,
right?
I'll admit.
But here's the deal. In our business, and this is where I'll get into selling the airline and selling the industry, but in our business, I don't care what's going on in the world. The election, it can be the volcano that erupted in Mexico last week. It can be the storm that went through yesterday. It can be the price of oil, going up by $1, whatever it is. It can be any social issue. Somehow, some way, that shows up in the airline every day. So we have 600,000 customers a day, and anything that you can imagine that has happened in your life, happens on our airline, multiple times a day. So there is a little bit of, you get a little bit of a rush from just looking at the newspaper and thinking about, all right, how does that impact what we're doing?
I was thinking, as I was coming in this morning, I was thinking about your job and about the industry. When I'm not trying to be a dean, I'm a strategy professor.
Right.
So one of the airlines, the industries we talk about all the time is airlines, because it's one that students have a great connection to.
Right.
But it's also, it's really challenging. And from the outside, it looks challenging. I imagine from the inside, it seems even more so. This is a historically tough industry. There's tons of competition. There's sort of tendencies toward commodity pricing sometimes. It's hard to segment. You've got really powerful stakeholders in different groups. Just, what was a day or two ago, we saw Spirit file for Chapter 11 bankruptcy. So when you think about
I'm
this...
not shedding any tears, by
No,
the way.
Boo Spirit, obviously. Down with Spirit. Yeah.
I know the people that started up Spirit, so anyway, I'm sure that they would give me a hard time. But.
Right. And if you have bookings on Spirit, maybe you'll consider American.
Right. We'll get you where you need to go, I guarantee you.
So considering this really competitive, rapidly changing environment, just to return to the idea of leadership, are there particular leadership qualities that you think are especially essential for an environment like you have? Not just for you, but for your senior team, other leaders and managers in your organization.
Right. Well, I'll go back. The airline business has never been an easy business. So I the first time I touched in the airline business was in the 90s. And at that time, I'm probably off, but at that time, probably 15 different airlines, accounted for the vast majority of air traffic. And today, it's a very different, business, right? I mean, there's been a lot that's happened. But of those 15 airlines, the vast majority, even the major airlines, American Airlines, went bankrupt, right? Delta went bankrupt, and Northwest Airlines, went bankrupt. Continental, it's just, right, just about every airline, has gone through its share of difficulty. Yeah. The one outlier in that is Southwest.
Right. And they're struggling now.
And they have business model issues. But what I'll say is that back when I started, I felt like we were surrounded by some incredibly, bright folks that were actually able to see the future. Couldn't bring it about, right? And that's the thing. Some things are just gonna take time, but there's no way, right? Back in the 90s, you were 15 years out of deregulation, right? And so a lot of airlines got started up. It became the hot place to go invest and lose all your money, right? Because it's interesting and everybody has something to do with it. It's a product that people like. But I was surrounded by some really bright folks, people that had, I believe, created, how Disney works and how Marriott hotels, work. So veterans from a lot of different, businesses that had gone through transformations. I think that they were able to see the future, which, really inspired, people like me. But we had to bring it about. And bringing it about took a lot of persistence, right? Things don't happen overnight. Yet, if I want to try to put something in place tomorrow in a company that has 130,000, people, we'll see the output of that in a year or longer. So it took some people with vision, and then persistence, and then just an incredible doggedness for seeing things through. So one thing to keep in mind, and this is, I really respect all the people that we stand on the shoulders of in the airline industry, and it's probably not too different than in education or anything that you want to go pursue. But the decisions that we're making today, out at the airport, are things that you're going to live with 50 years from now. I'm not going to be here for 50 years from now, but you all will be. But the decisions I'm making right now, they will absolutely positively show up at the airport. And so even today, I curse, some of our predecessors that, put all the analysts here. Look at DFW, wonderful airport for, local customers. It's the fastest way you can get from a parking lot to a gate. You try to run a connecting hub, with circular elements to it, and things that, are spread out over the course of, how many, square miles. It's really, really hard. But those are the decisions that were made that, in some respects, you can't reverse now. So I look at that, and it's not just the airport, but it's just the magnitude of things. An aircraft that we buy today, so when we go out and buy a new Dreamliner, a 787-9 with flagship suites and all that, that aircraft is going to be here for 35 years, It's a $175 million asset. And the only way that you can pay that off, even with you flying to Brisbane, and I probably can tell you what kind of tickets you buy, we need you to pay more.
It's actually not possible.
I want you flying business class,
Of course.
But, even at $1,000 a pop or $2,000 a pop, you think about paying off an asset that runs $175 million. This morning driving in, I know that the groundbreaking for the new Terminal F is today, right? So that's 15 gates. It's $1.5 billion just for that portion alone. That's $100 million per gate. So even before we can fly to Brisbane, it's not me, it's our team. Even before we can fly to Brisbane, we have to plunk down $100 million for a gate. And for Brisbane, that's probably 2.5 aircraft. So we're already in for $100 million plus probably $400 million in terms of aircraft. So I think the recognition of the decisions you're making now, and it probably didn't hit me until probably the last 5 years or so, the decisions we're making now really do have an incredible impact, on what you all are going to be managing, 20 years, 10 years from now, 20 years from now. And same holds true for, what we're designing in aircraft and sustainability. Happy to talk about all that.
Yeah. It's really interesting. So I started out by asking about how you deal with such a rapidly changing environment, and you turned that into the complete opposite of what I was thinking, and I liked that a lot. You said, well, it is rapidly changing, but you've got to think about decades ahead.
Right.
So I think when in a slow-moving environment, maybe we've got to think even further, but I really like that answer. I promise everybody here I will fly up the front when I go to Brisbane. I will be asking my bosses for a raise so that I can do this, and we will make Mr. Isom happy. I have just couple of other questions, then I would really be interested in your view on the local partnerships here. So
Sure.
with Fort Worth. We have a number of students in the audience, as we always do. You're in a really good position to give advice to business school students and students generally who aspire to become future leaders. So what advice would you give those who want to, who see a leadership path, who are looking to pursue this and want themselves to be delivering on commitments in the way that you do?
Well, this is an interesting question, and for all of us that have kids that and young adults that are looking at careers, it's just front and center. So I have a daughter that graduated from business school, from graduate school economics in Michigan not too long ago.
Congratulations.
I have a daughter that's a sophomore in college and a son that just graduated from Naval Academy.
Oh, wow.
And so these kind of questions are front and center right now, and it runs the gamut because those are all really different backgrounds.
And we know your kids won't listen to you, but we will.
No, they won't. They absolutely won't because I have absolutely positively tried, and it just doesn't work. But what I would say is that, and this is part of just me and my generation where I came from. So you ask for advice, you're going to get advice that is based on my experience. Okay, and you're going to get advice, based on somebody that really likes what he does. So, to do this job, right, we really do need people that are willing to invest the time. Yeah. So, I look at what it would take, for somebody to come in and say, oh, I want to lead an airline, a small airline even. Well, you're going to have to know something about, how jet engines run, okay? You're going to have to know a lot about the government, right? The airline industry has outside of alcohol and tobacco and firearms, we're the most regulated business there is. Maybe banking. I'll give a credit to one of our hosts here. Right, banking has a lot of regulation to it too, but we're incredibly regulated. So you better know how things get done in Washington. We're a company of 130,000 team members that with people that have, let's face it, that are the most service oriented. Things like reservations agents and people that push wheelchairs, all the way to PhDs that sold the first things that were sold on the internet, which were plane tickets, and developed the first real apps. So you run and when we talk about artificial intelligence or machine learning, we've been doing that for years in terms of diagnosing what's going on with aircraft, or optimizing in irregular operations, or determining how much you're willing to pay for your ticket.
Yeah, more
right?
now.
Exactly right. I know, but that's it runs the gamut of all those skills. So when I talk about advice, I look at that and I think that there's a lot of that in a number of companies, old line companies. And if you really want to, figure out how things work and have a chance to build a career, I would encourage, looking at some of the things that today aren't, that what I'd call sexy, right?
Yeah.
A lot of people can go into investment banking, or a lot of people can go into consulting.
Yeah.
I'm looking for a tremendous amount of talent that really requires people to come and spend some time.
Nice. All right. We are definitely delighted to hear that.
Okay.
One thing that's always impressed and intrigued me about American Airlines is how successful it's been in innovating in what is a very difficult environment. I mentioned the loyalty program. My understanding is that the American Airlines loyalty program was the first ever in the world. For those of you who flew in today, if you were using Wi-Fi, we have Mr. Isom and his organization to thank, because I think American was the first to offer in-flight Wi-Fi in US domestic flights. How does American Airlines foster a culture of innovation and entrepreneurship with such a large, complex organization?
Well, that's hard.
Mm-hmm.
But I'll tell you one thing that really helps: necessity, right? So I think what the necessity is the mother of invention, right? So I think that holds true for the airline business. When you're in a business that's so capital intensive, and just again, you're all in business school here. So American Airlines, no different from aviation, throughout the world. It's a low margin business. So I think our net income margin for the industry, worldwide, global, I think the net income margins at its peak was 3% for the industry as a whole.
That's tight.
Right? Which means operating margins are maybe maybe you get into double digits, but not much more than that. Which means and when you take a look at the price of tickets, and again, I know I'm joking a little bit about what people pay, but if you go back since the 90s, all the way to today, what you'll find on a real basis, the cost of air travel has declined by for a ticket has declined by 3% per year, every year.
That's great.
3% per year, right? Oh, it's incredible value. There's nothing else, that in the world, that is. But that has required, and to try to make money in a low margin business with a customer base that is constantly demanding more value, right? No matter what you try to do in terms of, premium traffic or amenities, whatever it is. So that has led to, just a constant look for how things can be done differently, more efficient. And you mentioned loyalty programs, Advantage program. Yep, that developed right here in Fort Worth. But the hub and spoke system, okay, that was this. It was developed out of necessity. Had to figure out a way to get people to more places, so you have broad network. So when we take a look at our network, it's not just the 300 cities that we serve in the United States. You can create, with all of our partners and our international destinations, you can create. I think it's almost 30,000 different connecting pairs of cities. Okay, somebody had to sit down and come up, with that. But that's when we talk about Southwest or Spirit, that's something they can't duplicate, right? You just can't do it. Even if you have the same size of fleet, but if you don't have that network and that set of partnerships, it doesn't work. Global distribution systems. So the ability to actually first get your product to travel agents in a broad scale so that everybody didn't have to call, a res line, but then ultimately selling the product, over the web. All of that is done, with a mind of serving customers in a way that's incredibly efficient, but also putting together something that, you can make a dollar on. So that's not going to change, okay? And I think that is also something that would attract you to the airline business. You won't go in a job, and I'm looking at the team, that is here with me today, and you won't, we have some folks that have run our international operations, our international sales groups. You have to be steeped in that local culture, in that community. You have to know how people want to buy. You have to understand the trends. that are going on, and you have to be able to then integrate that back into a worldwide, organization. So for me, I think that a really good prod in terms of culture is having people that have grown up with just the absolute, fear of being, left behind and, missing out and not being an innovator. Now, how do we, create opportunity within the company? It's through the normal business mechanisms. It's not like I'm running strategy offsites.
Right.
We're coming up with these ideas in our budget planning meetings. Our CFO last year launched a re-engineering of the company. And part of that was we're going to put basically every organization through a car wash, right? And we're going to talk about how technology, how process improvement, how people changes, how, we're 130,000 team members. We're also 90% unionized, okay? We also have people looking at how we can, make that relationship, even more engaging and work in partnership. So it's a lifestyle.
Yeah. I love the combination of the necessity and the customer embeddedness that drives you there. We have a few minutes. I want to talk a little bit about the Fort Worth partnership, and then I think we'll have some questions from the audience that'll be brought up. I think about American Airlines as having an enormous impact on the local region, contributing economically, sort of strengthening the region's position as an aviation hub. I believe as one of the city's largest private employers, I think American has more than 30,000 individuals just here in North Texas alone. We're very pleased to say that many of those are TCU alumni, so again, go Frogs. In addition to this direct employment, how do you see American Airlines' role in supporting the overall economic health and vitality of this region?
Well, first, I want to start with this. I am so pleased to have been able to, have our children, raised here in North Texas. They didn't. We were on the other side of town, but I'll tell you, the spirit of ingenuity, can do, that life is not set. It's very different than other places that you will go, right? Being able to go to school here and being in this community where there's growth, people are doing something, people want to move here. This is a community that is growing, it's thriving, it's not figuring out, and looking to the past. And that is a mindset that just tremendously beneficial to have. So I couldn't be more pleased to have our headquarters here. And American Airlines headquarters is in Fort Worth, okay? It's a small arm of Fort Worth that goes out and grabs it. But and that in and of itself is a way to recruit. And it's in Texas today is very different than Texas was 10, 15 years ago. I think that that has been spawned by a community, but also politicians that welcome that and embrace it and harness it. And so I don't know, is Maddie here? Mayor Parker? If she's not,
she's here in spirit. She's always with us in spirit.
So whether it's Mayor Parker or before her Mayor Price, Kay Granger, we have incredible politicians that have really tried to, harness an energy. So for me right now, whether it's recruiting, any of you to come and work at American Airlines and growing our business, American Airlines is an engine for the community. Yeah. So growth in the community, creating prosperous enterprise and places that people want to be, that is central to what I do. Because the more that Texas grows, the more that DFW grows, the better American is. So one of the things that we've reached out and I've tried to get involved with is a lot more on the Fort Worth side of things, and first with the Economic and Development Council. And on that side of things, our big job is creating an environment where companies want to come work. So, recently, this is just last week, we were able to have an event in which we welcomed Embraer, which is a manufacturer, third largest manufacturer of aircraft in the world. We welcomed their services organization to a new home in Fort Worth. Opportunities like that where I can sell and help bring and attract, I think is just key, and it's just reinforcing.
Yeah. It's interesting you say about living here. So I've just moved here, as people know. I was in the Midwest for a number of years. Before that, I was in Texas. I was at UT Austin. Right. I like to say you've got to kiss a few frogs before you find the right frog.
That's very good.
Thanks. It has been stark noticing the difference moving here. Right. And there was nothing wrong with the Midwest. I like it. Right. My wife's from the Twin Cities. We go back there all the time. But there is something that's vibrant here. It feels like a place people are moving to, right. Not moving from. And there's something intangible about that that's really inspiring. I enjoy that. So I'm delighted that you said that. I want to ask about one particular element of your embeddedness with the local community. This is the recent agreement that you did with the Dallas-Fort Worth Airport. Right. So this is, I think it was a new 10-year use and lease agreement. Includes, I think, $5 billion in pre-approved capital investments, which is just enormous and incredibly helpful for this region. Can you just talk a little bit about the decision-making process behind this investment and how you think about the long-term value that brings not just to your organization but to our region as a whole?
I can. So it's something that important to note is that as large as DFW is, the metro region, and as large as the airport is, only about, help me out, 40% of customers at DFW are local, right? The other 60%, in DFW, the metro region is fourth largest, metro region in the country now, right now, hopefully, third largest. But that's a massive number of connecting customers. Those customers could really fly over any, hub. They could fly over, Kansas City. They could fly over Houston. They could fly over Atlanta. So having a facility, that is very easy to use and provides efficient, connections is important. But cost is really important. So just again, I'll throw some numbers out. When I talk about a gate costing $100 million, that translates. We pay for that. American Airlines pays for that. Okay, so when we talk about $5 billion investment, American Airlines is going to be picking up 80% of the tab? A little bit more? 85% of the tab? Okay. So we pick up about 85% of the tab. We have to figure, in rents and landing fees, we have to figure out a way to make that work. Think about LaGuardia Airport, if anybody's flown through that recently. On a cost per enplanement basis, that's probably about 65, 70 bucks a head. So every time you touch, is it more than that? Okay, so you won't tell me. I always won't tell me. But anyway, but every time you touch foot there, okay, we're basically writing a check for 50, 60, 70 bucks. And you know how much you pay for a ticket. So if we're taking a quarter of the ticket, and that's just paid there, it can be incredibly hard to operate. Now New York's different, much larger local base, but it's important here that that's front of mind. If we don't have an incredible partnership with the cities of Dallas and Fort Worth and the DFW board, and somebody comes in and says, oh, let's go ahead and build X, Y, Z, you can get into really big numbers fast. And what that translates into is, well, we either have to figure out a way to throw more passengers in there, or that service will go someplace else. And so from a cost perspective, it's just incredibly important that we stay close. Now, for the community, it's an easy sell for me. And I think if you get outside of, you flying and your status on American or whatever, and you sit back and think about why North Texas is what it is today. At one time, right, it was crossroads and it was trails that met together. And then it was, you had some waterways, not very navigable, but you had waterways. And then it was interstates, okay? And that's why, Dallas and Fort Worth are what they are today. What they're going to be tomorrow is the result of being able to fly any place in the world like you, one stop, through DFW, airport. And, the city fathers and mothers 50 years ago, when they, decided to cooperate and have one airport and put, a massive, acreage, set of acreage, together to say, hey, this is going to be important for years in the future. They are the ones that, foresaw the future. And then, Bob Crandall and, some of my predecessors, when they moved American Airlines headquarters, that is an engine that I think is so critical. So the more that we all understand that it's working, hand in hand, and not, oh, the airport's a piggy bank, or, we're going to build something that, is a work of art, but it's not functional. The more that there's that kind of partnership, the better chance that we have to continue this prosperous future that we have, that's in front of us.
That's a really nice description of the importance of the partnership there.
Right.
I appreciate that. Well, we've got a few minutes, so a couple of questions from the audience here. May not be able to get to all of them, but we'll get through a couple.
Sure.
I thought this one was really interesting. So you've been in the industry through Chapter 11,
right.
through 9/11, through COVID. How do you prepare for the next inevitable crisis? Very, very positive question, and I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks.
But I thought you obviously think about this all the time.
You do. You keep a lot of cash on hand. Personally. right. Always be ready. No, but that's true, though. So, we're different than a lot of other businesses. So American Airlines has revenues of, $50-some billion this year. And look, we're profitable, and, I foresee a bright future given the industry dynamics. But we have to be ready for what's next. So we right now, we carry $10 billion plus of cash. And it's, a business our size, normally you wouldn't do that. And when I say cash, it's, lines of credit and other instruments. But, a business like ours, you normally wouldn't do that. But look, during the pandemic, here's just the simple fact of life. During the pandemic, air travel fell by 90%. So our revenues went from, $11 billion a month, or $10 billion a month, to virtually nothing. And at the heart of it, this is just a shocking number. At the heart of the pandemic, we were burning $100 million of cash a day. Wow. and the problem is we're people, we're airplanes, we're fixed assets. So there's no way out of it. I mean, you're not burning oil, but for the most part you can't. So one, you do make sure that you have the resources available for that rainy day. The second thing is that we've built a reputation of looking around all the corners. Most people would say that I'm hypersensitive to what's going on around me and in the world, because I've been trained in that even on the best of days there could be something that happens. And take for instance what happened with Boeing. Okay, well, Boeing has problems. Well, Boeing has problems. They can't produce an aircraft. I've sold tickets. I keep on saying we've sold tickets. And so, Boeing's not going to help us with that. And, so what does that mean? It means that we build in a lot more flexibility in our schedule, which means we have to carry more assets. So I think that there's, preparedness from that perspective. But then it's also, we've tried to set the company up in a fashion that can get in front of the problems. Again, we don't know what's around the corner, but through getting there first and making sure that we have the resources to weather whatever comes our way, that's how we do it.
Okay. Well, good luck for a few smooth years ahead, we hope.
All right.
This is an interesting question from one of our students. When you think about careers, what do you know now that you wish you knew toward the beginning of your career? Let's say as you were finishing up your MBA, what do you now know to be true that you didn't at that time?
That's a really good question. I would have liked to have foreseen some of the oil price shocks. Our business is very dependent on natural resources. What is it? That's a really tough question. I think through all this, we talk about up times, down times. I think one of the things that would have been really helpful, and I know this, it's to have embraced a North Star earlier in my career. Right. So Doug Parker, who's a fantastic leader, my predecessor, we really had to do a lot to position the airline in a way that we knew it was sustainable for the future, not in terms of environment that it was going to live. So you go back to where Doug and I started at Northwest. We went to America West, and largely America West, they acquired U.S. Airways out of bankruptcy to become U.S. Airways. U.S. Airways pursued a merger with Delta. Didn't work out. U.S. Airways pursued a merger with United. That's one, it spurred Delta and Northwest to get together. Second, it spurred United and Continental to get together. And then U.S. Airways, more or less came up with a restructuring plan for American Airlines when it went into bankruptcy. So my career isn't, all American. It goes back to those U.S. Airways days. And I know one of the things that Doug said, and he felt so deeply about this, was that he wanted to create an environment where the people that were working could depend on a job 10 years, 20 years into the future. And that's still what we hold today. We have, you mentioned earlier that American Airlines traces its roots through Charles Lindbergh. I met a dispatcher when I came to American Airlines, a dispatcher that was retiring after 45 years. I can't remember his name now, but this was 10 years ago. That had written a dispatch for Charles Lindbergh, who was doing promotional work for American in the late 1950s.
That's very cool.
Which is so cool. Yeah. Our most senior mechanic, what's his last name? I can't remember. Al Blackman. He retired after 75 years, not of age, of service. Okay? Yeah. Somebody that I met. So I think we realize the number of people that have vested their futures in what we do, and we also realize that what we do for a living, it's necessary. We build we build connections, and we help people get to big business meetings and weddings and funerals and important life's events. Yeah. So I think embracing this, where we are now, caring for people on life's journey, is just something that I probably would have liked to have had earlier in my career. Probably would have gotten me through some tough nights. But what Doug did was he sat us down and said, okay, we've gotten to a point where we know we're going to survive. Yeah. Now, what are we in this business for?
I really like that idea of the North Star. I think that's something that's appropriate personally and organizationally. And the 75 years is cool. Where academia, we're pretty comfortable with people being in their jobs for quite a while. Right. I think some of my colleagues have just said, hold my beer.
Exactly.
It's like, all right, we see where the bar is, but that's 75 is impressive.
It's a fantastic man. So a quick story on that. Yeah. So we had a celebration for Al, and we did it in JFK. He was a mechanic supervisor in JFK. And it came to work every day at 3 o'clock in the morning. We knew his routine. He went to McDonald's before he came in. So anyway, we had this big event, and it was a hangar in JFK. And we had a huge curtain. And what we did is we named it a 777 after Al. Okay. Oh, wow. And so we unveiled it, and it's just confetti cannons and all kinds of noise. And so Doug got up on stage with Al, and he said, well, Al, what do you think? And he goes, do I own it?
Gotta try.
Huh? Yeah, exactly. So he's a pretty sharp guy.
Our external relations team are taking notes at the moment.
Right.
We'll finish with one last question. I think is a really nice one. This also came from the audience. You've touched on some of these, but maybe not directly specifically. So what has been the most important lesson that you've learned in your career?
It's one that I live every day, and that's that, look, the lows are never as low as you think, and the highs are never as high as you think, and you better be, pretty steady. And for that reason, no matter what comes up, I know that we're going to figure out a way forward. And at the same time, I also know that, the great times are, they're fleeting too. Right. And so you better take advantage of living the moment. Yeah. And that's the way you build a career, and you build a life and relationships, I think.
What a wonderful way to finish this. I know I speak for everyone here when I say what a fascinating interview this was. You're a really inspiring leader. I think I see why the 130,000 people follow you. It's a great honor to us that you've joined us here on campus at TCU and the Neeley School. It's a real privilege to be able to speak with you, learn more about your own journey, your leadership lessons. And I want to thank you. And I wonder if everybody will join with me in thanking Mr. Robert Isom. And I'll just leave you with a request to try and join us in the spring, where the next Tandy Executive Speaker Series will host Wendy Davidson, the CEO of HAIM. Have a great day, everybody. Hope to see you soon. Go Frogs.
Go Frogs. Thanks, Dean.